This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and the community in which you now reside.
Richard G. Ryder. I live in Eastham.
Where, and when were you born?
I was born at an early age in Hyannis, Cape Cod Hospital in 1940, January 1940.
What was your childhood like growing up on Cape Cod?
Boy, it was, growing up on the Cape in Chatham was intense in the summer because there were so many visitors, and in the winter it was, it was quiet. You could lay down on the road in the middle of town at 8 o'clock at night and not get run over. There was nobody, nothing.
Where did you go to high school?
In Chatham High School.
What kind of education did you have before the military?
I went to 2 years of agricultural school at Stockbridge School at UMass, which was then a non-degree, just a diploma kind of thing. And I had studied dairy technology because I liked ice cream. And after I graduated from there, I was 19, and we had to go into one of the military branches, so I didn't want to go in the Army, so I chose the Navy.
What were some of your hobbies?
I had a flock of 50 chickens, which I sold the eggs and sold the chickens when their time was up. What did I do? I guess I liked building things, electronic kits and stuff. Back in the day, you could buy a kit of all the little parts and TVs and radios and put them together. I just followed the instructions. I didn't know how they worked, but they did when they got finished. I don't know if I had, I had model trains when I was a kid, but everybody did.
So were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
How does the drafting and enlisting process work?
Then or now?
Then.
I'm not sure if there was a mandatory draft or not, but I never got a number that I know of. I just knew that if I waited, I would be drafted into the Army. And I thought about, actually I was working at the A&P store in Chatham when I was 19, and my job was to stock the ice cream and dairy products and everything. And these two guys Coast Guard guys came in from a light ship, which was anchored off Chatham, They came in to get groceries, and they were like 20, 21 maybe. And they were kind of raggedy, and their clothes were beat up, and they were just giving me a hard time, so I decided I wouldn't join the Coast Guard. Like my grandfather and my two brothers had been in, but anyway. So that's what, but the draft part, even in high school, we knew that you had to go in one of the services if you were healthy enough.
How old were you?
When I joined, I was 19.
What did you do for work before the war?
Work, worked at a laundry in Chatham when I was 14. Rode my bicycle to work. I washed all the summer people's clothes by myself. The big machines like this, stuff thing, add the soap, all that. I was a caddy when I was like 11, which I hated, carrying bags up and down the hills, for wealthy people. It was not fun.
What did you think of the war?
Well, I was in, I went in 59, and the war didn't get going until 64 or 5. So there wasn't much. There was no war going on when I first went in, and I did my 4 years and got out. I got out for almost 85 days and went back in because I couldn't find anything to do in Chatham. It was, in November. Well, can you imagine? It was only 22 kids in a class, a high school class, and a lot of them were gone, got married. The girls were gone. There was no place to go. So I had to do something, so I went back in the Navy. Later on, when I got my orders to go to Vietnam, I'd been in the Navy, 9 years, I guess, by then. I thought about going to Canada, really did, but I said, no, wait a minute, I can't do that. I'm obligated to do this. I'm a Navy officer by this time. I can't just quit. I mean, I was against it, but I had to go. So we went.
What did your family think about you joining the military?
I don't think they gave it any thought at all. My two brothers had been in the Coast Guard. My sister had married a Coast Guard guy. I don't think they were probably glad that I went in so they didn't have to feed me.
How is the country different during times of conflict versus peacetime?
This country?
Yeah.
Boy, there was a huge division amongst the so-called patriotic people who thought we should be doing whatever we were told to do. And then the college kids they'd figured this out way before the senators and congressmen had done it. And the presidents had got into this and then couldn't get out. So they kept raising the ante, if you will. And but I was on an aircraft carrier off the coast in 1965, the coast of Vietnam. We were off playing around out here, and so we weren't really that close to we could see the bombs going off and see the shells at night, but we didn't really get involved with any Vietnamese people, really. So we were just doing a job. Can you imagine going on an aircraft carrier on a cruise for 8 months, leaving Norfolk, going across the Atlantic, going through the Mediterranean, going through the Suez Canal, going off the coast of Vietnam, and the longest time we were at sea without stopping or anchored anywhere was 40 days. I mean, of course, we knew people on land were getting shot at and killed, so like, okay, we got to be quiet about this, don't complain too much. But I don't know if I answered your question, but I know the students in colleges and stuff were mostly dead set against us being there because they were scared. I mean, I know they might not admit it, but I know that I was scared when I went and landed into Saigon. I thought, boy, if I get out of this alive, I'm going to be really happy, because the Viet Cong were doing all kinds of stuff they could shoot down planes and, rockets. I mean, you never know. So when we landed, it was like this, really steep. And when they took off, it was just the opposite, really steep. Get out of the way, So when I came back, I'm getting ahead of myself, but when I came back, we were told not to wear a uniform at the airports or anywhere because people would spit on you and stuff. And that doesn't happen anymore. It's, fortunately, now all the veterans are heroes.
Oh, so you weren't respected for being a veteran?
No.
So what inspired you to join the Navy?
The recruiter recognized that I knew how to read a microscope because of the bacteriology classes I had at UMass. He said, you'd make a good hospital corpsman. I said, what do they do? He said, oh, they serve in hospitals and patch people up and stuff, Okay, so, all right, sign me up. So I got $72 a month to start.
So, describe your family. What was it like leaving them behind?
My father was a fisherman in Chatham for 56 years. He, I don't know whether he was too concerned about us boys or not, really. Everybody knew that was what we'd have to do, so we just went, you know. I don't know.
How did your expectations going into war compare with your experience?
I was not prepared for the sneakiness and of the enemy. I was not prepared for how lazy some of the South Vietnamese troops were. I was not prepared for how gracious the civilians were. I didn't know how. I was really happy to interact with people like this old man who made those cookie molds and stuff. But I was unprepared to travel in the boonies, like taking a jeep out, say from here to Hyannis, out to visit a clinic or something, and nobody around. We just had World War II rifles, and I mean, just no protection at all. So I wasn't prepared to see bodies laying on the floor. When where we were staying, the doctor and I stayed in this big house, and we got this commotion one night, and opened the door, and there's these bodies laying on the floor that they dropped them off because they knew we were American medical people. Nothing we could do for them. So, but I was not prepared for the beauty of the flowers. I took a lot of photos. I have a lot of slides of the flowering plants and how meticulous some of the Vietnamese were maintaining their gardens and stuff. It was nice, but still, I know it was awful hot. I was never prepared for that, and we never got a radio signal, so I don't know how hot it was really. You know, I mean, we were down in the way down in the delta, way where it's hot anyway.
So, how were you treated by your peers?
At first I was an enlisted person. I was a hospital corpsman. I was a pharmacy technician. So we were kind of, I'm going to brag a little bit, the pharmacy techs we went to basic hospital corps school, and then we went to a hospital, then we went to the specialty class of pharmacy, which was 8 months long. That's a long time in a military school, because it's no spring breaks, no summer off. It's just 8 months of 8 to 4:30, 5 days a week classes, you know. So it's pretty intense. So pharmacy techs were kind of on the higher level of some of the technicians, I thought, because the school was so long, and we had to learn Latin names and all kinds of stuff, compounding, chemistry, and everything else, you know. So I think, as far on the ship, the corpsmen were always respected because, you know, you got 3 groups of people that you depend on: the postal guy who's going to dole out the mail, the cooks, and the corpsmen are going to take care of your health records and shots and everything else, you know, patch you up if you get wounded and stuff. So we didn't have any trouble getting along with the people. I didn't think. I didn't, anyway.
Describe the hardships you experienced.
The hardships? Well, mostly it was excessive heat and humidity. Being away from the family. I had to live, my home was on an aircraft carrier. It was 3,400 men and 4 doctors when we went to sea. And it was, being a corpsman, I could sleep in air-conditioned space once I made a certain level, but a regular time, before I got promoted, we had to sleep in this metal rack, canvas, with a little skinny little mattress. And the guy, you're about this far away from the guy above you, It's really cramped and hot. And that was, I didn't like that. But what are you going to do?
What was the best part of serving?
In 20 years? Retiring. Retiring as an officer, actually. I made it through from enlisted to an officer, and, quite a bit higher than I expected to go.
Describe what it's like in Vietnam.
Well, in the cities, it's diesel trucks, motorcycles, motor scooters, motorcycles, people driving around. I remember my eyes stinging from the diesel smoke, from the exhaust from these various cars. They use a lot of Honda motorcycle. Well, they're kind of not heavy duty. They're not like big motorcycles. They're small, but they generally, the women sit on the back with their fancy dresses, and they go like their legs are both on one side because they ride, kind of, that's the way they do it. It's just a frenetic. The marketplaces are really interesting. You go to the market and the people go there every day to get stuff. They don't have plastic bags. They wrap the food up in banana leaves and things like that. They were selling turtles. They were selling snakes. They were selling chickens. I think they were dead, probably. Ducks. And all kinds of weird things, and tea, and pineapples for a nickel. I mean, the food was, what they were growing was really healthy stuff, But there was a combination of French cooking, because the French had been in Vietnam before the Americans got there, and Asian Chinese cooking. So, I mean, it was interesting.
Did you like it there?
Did I like it?
Yeah.
Better than being shot at directly. I mean, we were rocketed once in a while, but you never knew. You couldn't go anywhere at night. Never went anywhere at night because the Viet Cong were. I mean, you couldn't. And the scary part is you couldn't tell who the enemy was because they all looked alike. It's like in this country, if you're just dealing with white people, you don't know what they're thinking or who they're going to vote for or anything. You can't really have a discussion about a lot of stuff now because it's so divisive.
Describe what boot camp was like.
Boot camp in the Navy? Well, I was 2 years older than most everybody else in my company. The company was maybe 50 people, I don't know exactly, all guys from different parts of the country. Some, they had trouble understanding what they were saying because they were from the deep south or whatever. Physically demanding. The company commander, who was an enlisted first class, I guess, he did stuff that you couldn't get away with now. Kicking you in the rear end. You'd have to bend over and put your hands on your knees, and he'd literally kick your butt with his foot if you messed up. Marching everywhere, which that was okay. And we had to do physical exercises with a gun. You hold it out this way, and then you go back this way, then you go this way, back this way, up over your head, back this way. Then you hold it out, and you hold it out, and you hold it out. And sometimes people start, this is good, and you get back up, and then.
How long would you hold it?
I don't know. Seemed like forever. We had to wash our own clothes in a bucket. We didn't have any irons or anything, but the laundry detergent used to come in a can about this high, And so we figured out that if you added hot water, took it, once the can was empty of soap, you fill it full of hot water, you could use it as an iron. You hung your clothes outside with little pieces of string. You know, they had to tie a square knot in each one. I mean, we didn't have any clothespins. It was all tied. But everybody was in the same boat, you know. Everybody, I kept thinking, boy, so many thousands of people have done this before me. I guess I can do it, you know. So.
Take us through a typical day in the Navy over in Vietnam during the war.
Well, I was assigned to like I said, a military public health advisory team, but we were working under the direction of an Army colonel, but we got directions from the State Department, the U.S. aid, so it was like, okay, some days we'd go to visit a Vietnamese medical clinic out with the Jeep, the doctor and I. Some days he would be helping with surgery. Some days we'd get up, we had to drive over to the chow hall for breakfast. We couldn't walk, it's too far. We'd figure out what we were going to do. We kind of made up our own plan of what we're going to do because there's just the four of us. I mean, I got to fly on Air America, which was a CIA-funded airline. And I had a pass. I could go anywhere in the country if I wanted to. But you had to. A lot of times I spent sending a cassette tape to my ex-wife, or writing a letter or something, or taking photos. You know, did a lot of that. And sometimes I have to give briefings to high-level people who come in. You had to tell them whatever progress we were making, if there was any.
So why the Navy?
Why the Navy? Over there? Because all the services had public health advisory teams. Air Force, Navy. Well, I say all of them. I guess the Army must have had a couple too, but they were spread out throughout the country. And some of the areas were more dangerous than others. Ours was not really that dangerous, but some of the places were quite dangerous for these teams, and some of them got killed. So some of the guys, you know, I guess the Navy took their share of public health issues. I had a corpsman. One of my corpsmen was out on a tiny island out in the ocean, basically. And his job was to improve the fresh water, the wells and stuff, if he could, you know. Rather than taking water out of a river, which looks like coffee, you know, with cream in it. I mean, it's nasty stuff.
Did you have to drink that water?
No. But you had to be careful not to put ice in anything, any drinks or anything, because the ice was made from the same kind of water. And they keep ice cold by using rice hulls. After the edible part of the rice is taken out, there's these hulls left over, like soft, and it's good insulation if you put 3 or 4 inches of it around a cake of ice, you know. But if they chop it up, those little kernels get in your soda or beer or whatever you're having, you know.
So did you say that did you decide to be a medical assistant?
Be a what?
Did you decide to be a medical assistant?
No. That was, if you're going to be, I enlisted as a hospitalman recruit. So wherever that path would take me, you know, that's what I did. I spent a year in Guantanamo, Cuba, and as a pharmacy technician, but I had to stand watch in the emergency room, you know, patching people up and stuff. Mostly sailors that got in fights and stuff, you know. So I only sewed up one Coast Guard guy had a laceration on his nose, and that's the only one I ever signed. I gave a lot of shots, but only sewed up one person.
What was it like working in a hospital and seeing like so many people like injured?
Well, I served in I don't know, 5 or 6 different hospitals, and I was the first 6 months at the Navy Hospital in Boston and Chelsea. We worked a lot of hours. We worked on the ward 30 nights straight without a night off, from 11 to 7. And then you got off on Friday morning, and you didn't have to come back till Monday afternoon at 3. But can you imagine working 30 nights straight without any time off at all? Patients, I worked on a ward that was devoted to taking care of people with infections and stuff. It's called dirty surgery. So we had to change a lot of dressings and things like that, which I like to do. I mean, and some of the patients would wait. If I was working from 3 to 11, they'd wait to have the dressing changed till I came on duty, because there was one guy who was really nasty to the patients. He shouldn't have been a corpsman. He inflicted pain on them when he was changing the dressing, and he didn't have to do that. So when I first went on the ward, I was E3, a hospital corpsman, E3, and this guy was he'd been in over 4 years, and he was still an E3. It didn't take me long to take the E4 test, and I all of a sudden outranked him. And I'd only been in like a year and a half, something like maybe less than a year, and here I am already outranking him.
How does ranking work?
You take a test, take competitive exams against all the other corpsmen if you're an E3 and you want to go up to E4, a petty officer, you take a service-wide exam. Everybody, it's all the same questions to everybody, and then your answers are. The more right answers you get, the better chance you higher the score. See, and they only have X number of spaces for certain rates, ranks or rates. So you could pass the test and fairly high, but not advance. So you had every 6 months you had to do it again. And so, as I was saying, the pharmacy technicians, there were a lot of questions on the test that had to do with pharmacy. So if you're not a pharmacy tech, you're struggling because you don't know the answer, So that was helpful. But corpsmen, seeing bodies and stuff, you never get used to that. I mean, one time I had a fingerprint. I used to have to fingerprint anybody who died in the hospital. And I had a fingerprint of an old man who, I mean, he just died, but he wasn't stone cold yet, but he was not cooperating, Tried to roll his fingers, and he had to take an ink pad and get all the fingers and thumb and everything else. And I never expected to have to do that.
What was the hardest decision you had to make?
Decision? One of my corpsmen in Vietnam got carried away one night and shot off his weapon in the compound, and the colonel said he wanted the corpsman out of the province by that night. He said, "I don't want this man here anymore." And J.B. Edwards, he was a second-class corpsman, E5, and he was scared to death of flying because he'd been shot down before in a helicopter. And I said, "JB, I'm sorry, but you're going to call the medevac helicopter. They're going to take you out of here." I said, the colonel wants you out of here. And he was shaking. I really felt bad about that. JB had, like I said, been in a crash before, crashed and burned, and he was understandably scared to go in another helicopter. So that was the hardest thing. But that was in Vietnam. But the hardest thing I ever did on the ship, a friend of mine, it's kind of a long story, but a couple of guys were overcome by hydrogen sulfide gas, and they sent for a corpsman, and he grabbed his bag, first aid bag, and went to where these two men had been down into empty space, and they were overcome by hydrogen sulfide gas. And this corpsman friend of mine, he was overcome by the same gas, and he died. And they found him. He was given mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to the other men. And it became my job to prepare his body for shipment back to the United States. And tears running down my cheeks his kid and I went on Liberty together. We traveled in the car together. He was a friend. And it doesn't get any more difficult than that, I don't think. He couldn't see anything wrong with him, but hydrogen sulfide is a respiratory depressant, and it stops your breathing, and he just, so, washing his body, putting a tag on his foot, I mean, you just don't, I don't know. I'm sure that other men in combat lost a lot of friends, and they get they seal over, I think. You have to put it out of your mind, but if I hear a helicopter, an old Huey coming over, it's just all of a sudden, that brings back memories, you know. But that was the most painful thing, hardest thing I ever did. Even the shots was easy.
What achievement are you most proud of?
Excuse me?
What achievement are you most proud of?
The Navy Achievement Medal I got for my service in Vietnam, and it has, I don't know if you can see this, it says with Combat V. A lot of people who get Bronze Stars in the Army, I'm going to be kind of catty about this. I was recommended for a Bronze Star by the by the Army people I was working with, but the Navy said, no, that's not appropriate. So they gave me a Navy Achievement Medal with a Combat V. If you see a Bronze Star plate now, those guys are getting the plate for free, but they don't have the Combat V with it. It's because, I don't know. Anyway, you get a free plate if you get a Bronze Star, but you don't get anything with this thing. But I have two of these. One with
Why is that?
It's the way it works. I don't know. State of Massachusetts gives you a free plate if you have. See, a lot of the people who worked in the rear with the gear, the younger officers got Bronze Stars, but it's not a combat thing.
Did you see any direct combat?
Excuse me?
Did you see any direct combat?
No. Well, not really. We had a Navy SEAL team that were friends of ours. You'd sit up on our place where we lived, sit up on there at night and watch helicopter gunships shooting off, a couple miles away, But no, I wasn't supposed to be a combat person. Wasn't trained for that.
Describe the moment in the war where you felt most scared.
Most scared?
Mm-hmm.
The day we learned that the colonel had been ambushed on a canal. See, everybody travels by canals out there. They're really man-made, straight and narrow, and some are wider than others. But he had taken a Boston whaler boat, had gone down to some place that the doctor and I had visited before, in the daytime. And the enemy opened up, fired, killed him. The major was wounded. The major jumped over the side of the boat and was on the other side of the boat, so whoever was shooting at him couldn't see him. He survived, but the colonel did not. The colonel was from Falmouth, but he's been pretty much. He was from another town in Massachusetts, Granby, I think, and but nobody even knows. His name is on the wall down. I've seen it down in Washington. The wall starts off skinny and low, and as more deaths occur, and then it tapers back down to again, at the end. yeah, you kind of reflect on, whoa, that could have been us, you know. So, but you know, the doctor and I would travel in the Jeep out in the boonies, no paved roads or anything. And you got this creepy feeling that somebody's watching, you know what I mean? I mean, it's all rice paddies, as far as you could see. Occasionally there'd be a palm tree and some grass and stuff. Nobody around, but you just, they could kill you at any moment if it was so, if it was your time is up, you know, there's nothing you can do about it.
Were you in like dangerous situations often?
Yeah, I think so. We'd go to another place and the day before there would be a big truck, upside down, had been blown up by a mine, you know. I mean, yeah. But most of the time it was fairly safe if you stayed out of harm's way, you know what I mean? You don't go out at night, like I said. You just stay in a safe spot.
What was your darkest moment?
The what?
What was your darkest moment?
Darkest? In my whole 20 years? Or just
Yes.
in Vietnam?
Your whole 20 years.
Prepared my friend's body for shipment back to the United States.
Did you lose a lot of friends?
There were shipmates. There's a difference between a friend and a shipmate. I had a few friends, like Richard, my friend, the one that was killed. He was a good friend. We lost 9 men on a cruise, an 8-month cruise. We lost 9 people due to various things. Pilots were not make the turn onto the ship, or you don't want to get too friendly with people because you might lose them, you know.
What was your happiest moment?
When the plane took off from Saigon, heading back to California, and it was, like I said, going up steep. And boy, as soon as we got kind of leveling off, everybody on that plane started clapping and yelling. That was a supreme happy moment, I'll tell you. Thank God I got out of here, you know. I don't know if you ever heard some of the songs. We gotta get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do. You know, and that was, everybody was singing that, counting the number of days you had, how many, you know, if you get down to fewer than 10 days, fewer than 99 days, you were a 2-digit midget. Everybody knew how many days they got, and how many days to go, you know.
Were they always like counting down?
Yeah, oh yeah, everybody. As soon as you got there, you start counting. You know?
How did you stay in contact with your loved ones?
I was able to call once, and you had to go through a switchboard, the local switchboard, then have to go through a switchboard in Saigon. Then they'd patch you up with, you know, somehow. And I called my ex-wife once. On the ship, I was able to talk to my uncle, who was a ham operator in Chatham. Other than that, it's just mail and cassette recordings.
What was it like for you the day you came home?
From Vietnam, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I got to ride on a 747, which had a piano on it.
What's that?
A big airplane, a civilian airplane. They just retiring them now. They have 2 levels. The plane's huge, like the Air Force One that the president flies on. Same idea. Landed in Groton. Oh no, I don't know, Providence maybe. Got a plane. I got a smaller plane to Groton, and my ex-wife. We didn't have any children at the time, so I don't know.
Where were some of the places like you traveled?
Oh, I've been to, in the Navy, I went to Italy, Mount Vesuvius, Pompeii, We went through the Suez Canal, but we didn't stop. I've been to Hong Kong a couple of times, Japan, two or three different ports. I was in Australia. Let's see, danced with a girl that didn't speak any English. She was Chinese. I don't know where that was. Probably in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a really fascinating place. And then after, well, of course, I was in Vietnam. I guess that'll do. You know, I've been other places since then, but not in the Navy.
That's really cool. How were you received by your family and friends when you came home?
Well, they were pretty happy that I was home. You know, there wasn't the hero sort of aspect that you see happening today. But I like to say that, you know, these guys now are getting paid. They're doing the duty of, there's no draft. So these guys are getting paid, and they volunteer to do this. Having said that, I don't know what drives them, why they do it.
When you came home, how much had Cape Cod changed?
It's been gradual. In Eastham, to make it more relevant, my dad, we never came to Eastham except my father used to come over to go rabbit hunting when we couldn't go fishing. There was nobody lived over here. The fields open, wild rabbits. We came over to buy turnips in the fall, and if a fishing boat went aground on the beach somewhere, we'd come over and see that. But other than that, we had no reason to come to Eastham. Now, Chatham is so built up. There's no open fields. There's too many people with too much money. I don't know. I don't know where they get the money.
What was the most important thing you learned during the war?
Important thing I learned. I think I'm a pretty good judge of people who I had to work with and for. I tell you, I spent 3 years in Memphis, Tennessee. That was, I just don't know how they get by. I don't know.
How do your memories of war affect you? Are you reminded of them often?
Yeah. I wanted to see Ken Burns's Vietnam stories, but for some reason our TV, you couldn't see all the quotes of the North Vietnamese. I really was curious about what the North Vietnamese soldiers were thinking, and I just I don't know whether it's the TV set or the cable or what, but we can't get it so you could see everything, you know. And I said, I'm not watching this if I can't read that. So I go to bed and read. My wife watched all that stuff.
Describe any regrets. Like, would you have done anything differently?
No, because I retired when I was 39, and I got half pay. I'm 77. I'm still getting paid half pay. Oh, it's not a lot. It's plenty to pay the taxes and everything, buy a car once in a while, buy food, and we have health insurance. I don't think a lot of young men understand the value of having health insurance. And when they're young, they don't need it, but unless something really bad happens. We don't pay anything for regular routine prescriptions. They get delivered from someplace in Arizona or something for free. Anything you want, a heart medicine or something, it comes in the mail, and you don't pay anything. I mean, and you go to the clinic in Wellfleet, it doesn't cost anything. I had a knee replaced, didn't cost anything. You know, Medicare, Social Security, all that stuff. So.
Do you still keep in contact with any comrades from the military?
Not really. I have one friend who was, his name was Edsel, like the car. His father worked for the Ford plant in Detroit. Edsel was an outgoing black kid who was a pharmacy tech along with me up in New Hampshire. He was a character. He still is. But he's the only one I have an email address for. I did go back to pay my respects to my friend who was buried up in near Springfield, Greenfield, the one who got killed on the ship. And I did go back 20 years after that and visited his grave. I guess that's as close as I could ever get to him, you know. See, he was not considered a wartime casualty, but he did get the Marine Corps and Navy and Marine Corps Medal posthumously, which is comparable to a Bronze Star and other things. But it wasn't in combat, so he was trying to save his shipmates. And his mother died, his stepfather died, he doesn't have any siblings. I don't know. I know where his grave is, but nobody ever visits him, you know. Sad.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have one last question. If your grandson or granddaughter said he or she was thinking of joining the Navy or some part of the military, what advice would you give them?
I give advice to people who visit the Coast Guard boat at Rock Harbor. You know, I'm involved with that. I'm sort of in charge of the boat. Especially the women, young women, if they're juniors or seniors in high school, I say, don't be afraid to consider going into the Coast Guard. They have equal opportunities. They have women are doing the same thing that the men are doing. And in fact, the admiral in charge of the Coast Guard between Maine and New York is a woman admiral. She's gone through the academy, worked her way up. They have women running the boats everywhere. They have women are flying the planes. I mean, they do it everything. I wouldn't recommend anybody going in the Army. We got, 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Well, thank you so much for your time.